Welcome back to DM-Nastics, the gym for dungeon masters to work out their minds. I am one of your hosts, DM Neil, aka Jote Moniac, and I am not alone in the gym because gyms are kind of creepy when you're alone. Have you been to a Planet Fitness at 2 a.m.? Not great. But with me today is...
Jordan Stewart from the Bad Venture Club.
Perfect. Okay, so DM Jordan, today we are going to lift the mental weights. Last time we talked about the magic items from the cartoon, but this time we're going to talk about something I think is amazing and absolutely necessary for every DM at some point. Because we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, 10 rewards that aren't gold and magic items.
Yes.
So this one's from the gamer. Shout out to Scott Baird for writing it. And we will just jump right into taking some reps. So what is number 10? Hold on. Okay, let's go back one step.
Yeah. Let us stretch a little bit, Neil, before we get into the heavy reps. I'm a newbie here, so I need to warm up.
Before we started recording, I did say that I don't enjoy being overly critical of some of these articles, but I will admit that I don't agree with the main conceit of why this article was written.
Okay, why?
Basically, like, the problem with this is that there aren't too many useful things you can buy, and magic items tend to pale in comparison with basic class abilities. Is kind of the reason that Scott has presented like the idea of this article. And then if the DM is sick of standard rewards that seemingly every D&D campaign gives out, then they should try some of these unconventional treasures to give out to the party.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And let's start there. And this is only me and the way I run things. In my head, you just can't give out magic items all the time. You will break the game. Like, one, there's an attunement limit. 2, that means either you're going like higher and higher in the rarity of the magic items, and then the unknown ways that those interact with each other, because they are not balanced like the classes are. Inevitably, your game just snaps in half.
Yeah. And if everything's magical, then nothing's magical, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So
if someone looks at your party while casting Detect Magic and goes blind, and if there is anything harder than dealing with a party that has too many magic items, it's trying to take any of that away. I have never successfully done that in a way that felt good. Like, that's so hard. It feels so punishing for a thing that I made happen. Like, that wasn't, I mean, they didn't make the magic items. They didn't take the magic items. They didn't buy the magic items without me knowing. Like, there's nothing happened in terms of them getting magic items that it wasn't a direct result of choices I made as the DM. So yeah, taking those back, not an option that I've ever seen as a good one.
Yeah. And it's also coming from like me as a player. I'm currently playing a rogue that has 0 magic. And so everybody in my party just gives me the magic items that we earn or steal or whatever. And you've listened to the pod. So like, you know, we have recently like raided this police precinct full of magical contraband. And I'm like overwhelmed with the amount of magical items. Like, I don't even know what half of them do. But the thing is about our magical items is they're like really stupid. So that, I think that's a good way to like balance them out.
Yeah.
Like, I have a hat that just produces pigeons, or like I have a nose, like a fake nose that like lets me detect. It's basically like a one spell thing, and it's only one a day. So I don't know. You can kind of get creative with some of your magic items, like do some homebrew stuff to like balance out magic items. So like they're either like a once a day type thing, or like they're just not like a giant poisoning flaming sword of doom like from the Adventure Zone.
Yep.
You know.
Yep. Yeah, and like I said, balancing around those things is extremely difficult. So some of the alternatives that a person could use are listed here. There are 10 options, and we'll go through them. We'll talk about how either we've used them, implemented them, how we would, wouldn't, or should or shouldn't. But what is number 10 as a thing to give your party that is not directly a magic item?
So he suggests number 10 is a base. Many D&D adventurers involve going on epic journeys, but what about a campaign that involves protecting one place from harm? Frodo might have destroyed the One Ring, but his allies had to hold the fort of Rohan and Gondor. It's where the DMs can cause a campaign centered around maintaining a base.
So I am a huge fan of this one. Like, this is the one
Really?
that I might have put as number one. So we're gonna talk about the second layer benefit to this is that it is one that you can then perpetually give more to, and it is often where they will sink gold. Rather than purchasing specifically magic items, often players will want that. It's their home base. So how can we make a home base cooler? One of the things, especially with a higher level campaign, and this is what I learned from like the people that brought me into it, was having basically like a ring of summoning inside of the base, and all of the PCs had a ring that they would wear that is tied directly to it. So if your character ever died, they're immediately transported back to base in that ring, and someone is there basically on staff to bring them back.
Wow. And that will come up. Another one of those aspects would come up later in the list. That person.
Right? Yeah. And so you can, and like I said, there like so much of the list that follows from this is also like immediately can be put back into this base. Yeah. And I think one of the bigger things like with a base is it's hard to force it, but like really thinking about like sell it, you're almost like you're like a D&D real estate agent. So like as they're going through somewhere, you'd be like, wow, look at the floor plan of this place. And like you're trying to sell them on the idea of something that you've cleared out, because then you have even more like tied to it to say, hey, you spent all this time, you spent all this effort. Is this a place you would like to keep for yourselves?
Look at this cozy cottage. It seems very empty. Is that a for sale sign next to this cottage?
It's conveniently placed right next to the dungeon too.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I wouldn't normally think about this. Again, I'm a newer DM and a newer player, so this didn't come immediately to my mind, but it makes sense that you would want to have like a localized area for your players to be. What I struggle with is like, how do you have them earn it instead of just like have it be a part of the narrative that you're telling? Because right now in our campaign, we kind of have like a base, but it was just like, it just happened to be like the base of like the organization that we joined. That's totally fine. I don't think you have to necessarily have your players earn the place. But what do you think is like a way that you could like have them earn it?
So two different ways is like, are you clearing it out, and then now like, let's say it was kobolds
taking it over.
Yeah, kobolds that kobolds, dragon cult, dragon, and now you've taken the whole thing out and now it's yours. Oftentimes that can be a really good reward, kind of like, are you doing milestone leveling? Also, here's this base that you can have. The other way I think of, like in the scenario you presented of earning it, is having something go against it. So like in a place that you're kind of given, or a place that you're trying to defend that is already there, like have something either attack it internally, externally. Then you kind of have that effort of like, okay, and let's say it's the castle, and whoever owns it is like, okay, you basically have keys to this place. You are its stewards. You are the ones that made sure it didn't explode or something along those lines. So I think if it's a place that you kind of feel like you've given, having something that makes it feel like there's a reason why you get to stay there.
Yeah. The only thing that really matters is just having that ownership, right? Or having your players have that sense of ownership. So it doesn't really matter, I guess, how they get it, as long as they feel like it's theirs.
Yeah. And constantly, and trying not to forget it. And that's a common DM thing. You're going to forget about the stuff you gave them. They're not. And then that's often where I get surprised, where I was like, oh yeah, I did do that, didn't I? That felt great in the moment. It doesn't feel great right now when it's just like completely gotten rid of anything that I thought I was doing, but that's okay. That's the fun I get to have, where I also don't know where the story's going, because I sometimes forgot all the places the story has already been. But we got a whole list of 10. So number 9 is one inspiration.
Ooh, yes.
Inspiration as a reward is difficult, I have found.
Okay.
In the sense that it often feels like a resource that someone wants to hold until something really important happens. And by that, I mean they end the game with inspiration.
Yeah, that's so true.
So I have found that for me, having a physical, like, especially if I'm at the table, having a physical object that is handed to the player that they then can hand back to me is a way to like help with like, no, you have inspiration literally in your hand, and trying to just let it be just anything. If let's say I had inspiration and you failed your roll, I'll give you my inspiration. Allow that. Yes. Sure. And I often frame it as the sooner I have, because then it also turns into like a finite resource, because I say the sooner you give me back a token, the sooner I can give inspiration back out, because you have all my tokens right now. I don't have
it.
So the sooner I get it, the sooner I can give it back out.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think about it. And even just like letting your players know, like, hey, I'm going to be giving you guys inspiration. And like, as long as you guys are being creative, and like use it. Because if you don't use it, then there's not really a point of me giving it out. And so I think if you just like establish that culture of using their inspiration, then that will also have that return on investment where like they will be trying to get it as well. You have to have that free market.
I haven't tried this very much because I don't know how it would land, especially because I think the place I would want to try it is at a convention. But again, I don't know how it would land. We have a back and forth of if you give, I feel like they would never use the inspiration because if I get it, I want to use it.
Mm-hmm.
That feels wrong. Yeah, I don't think that would work. It might work depending on your table, where like if you give it to me and if I use it, I have to give it to you.
Oh, like within the party?
Yeah, like almost like a shared resource pool for both. So if I use an inspiration token, it goes back into the pool for the party. But if the party uses it, I get it back. And so it could just be this, big back and forth thing. And that would work really more for like a higher fantasy campaign.
Yeah.
At that point, you're really just messing with rolls in a very specific way.
Yeah, that seems really complicated.
And aggressive from both sides. I think that was pretty straightforward. Inspiration's there. It's always been there. I think just using it more often as a reward, probably a good way to go. But what is number 8?
Number 8 is henchmen. I don't know what else you would call that. An NPC, like an NPC that the players can have to help them along the way. I love this one. This one's a fun one.
There's only so much you can do, though. There's only so many NPCs you can have travel with a party.
Oh, for sure.
What's always interesting to me, though, is looking. I have had it said of me, which I will shout out to Kill Every Monster and the wild compliments that they gave me that I have learned to accept. Dear listener, this has nothing to do directly with D&D, but what I have realized over time is that I can't necessarily change the way that I made someone else feel. So I have to accept that, positive and negative. So when someone gives me a compliment, the only thing you can do is say yes and then deal with it after the fact, because I just don't take them all that well. Now that said, Dylan and Aram gave me a lot of compliments to say. I do a lot of looking back to the past, because my theory is also like, if we don't know the history, we are inevitably doomed to repeat it. Yes. So I like looking backwards just so I can keep moving forward. So one of the things with older D&D is that the parties were enormous. Mm-hmm. In the sense that like just sheer players, you would often have a table of 8-10 players. Oof. And each of them, like you had leadership in 3rd edition, you had henchmen, you had all of these things going backwards. So you're talking about Now, I think an example of what does because it was when I did a lot of research into initiative and how that's progressed through the years. One of the examples was like all of these monsters and then the 9 players and basically like the 7 to 8 soldiers, henchmen, and everything that they had. So the reason you're rolling initiative where both sides are just rolling one die is because there's literal sides. Like you're talking about 20 characters in their and party
That
members
sounds
and
awful.
like 20 monsters.
My
And so you're
gosh.
literally rolling for each side. So it has a lot of history, but it has the chance of taking away a lot, especially if like one player is really good about looking to that NPC.
Mm-hmm.
And like the amount of spotlight that NPC could potentially have is tough. That's why I think 1, maybe 2
Yeah.
that always travel with the party, I think is great. Because inevitably, like they're going to latch onto somebody and bring them with them.
Yeah, because we're as DMs have just like we're just so great at creating characters that people fall in love with. We can't help it. But
and it's never the one we wanted, but yes.
That's so true. It's all the players always like, and I'm guilty of this, just latching on to like the dorkiest guy. But I think I have said this and I will say this forever. One of my favorite podcasts, or my very favorite podcast, is Not Another D&D Podcast. And I think Brian Murphy does a really good job of this, where he basically just gets to have his own playable character as like this like sidekick that always comes along in their journeys. He had Balnor as a character, and it's so much. I agree with you. It's so much easier with like a smaller party, like 3-4 players max. I don't know how anybody does like the 8-player things. I don't know how Critical Role has done like their cast for so long, and I respect them. I can't listen to them because it's like way too confusing, too many players. But yeah, if you have a small enough cast, I think having like a little henchman that can follow you along. And sometimes Brian Murphy like forgets to roll for that character all the time, like doesn't do initiative, and he's like, oh shoot, like Balnor didn't even do anything this battle. But it's fun because it gives another person to like add. It gives the DM somebody who can like add like context to the story, like in character, instead of like them asking questions and then you having to break character or whatever and ask them or answer things. But you can give them story beats as that henchman, or give them help, like if they need someone to like in their newest season, Brian has a squire that goes around and just gives them potions because they get in these big battles, and it's like that's their only job. So things like that, I think a henchman is super awesome.
Yeah. And then going back to like we had talked about with the base, like is it an armorer, like someone that is able to make magic items, and like just having that be a thing that's available. It's not a thing they have to go figure out all the time. It's like, there's the person, go to the person, and like you can structure what they can do, how fast they can do it, and all those things to like fit what you need as a DM, but then you're not having to ask that question every time. Like it's just, nope, there's Steve the armorer. He's ready whenever you need him. Just back at base, just plinking away. But those things are also nice.
Like it's good for the players. It's also good for the DM to be able to like help their players to like give those story beats. Also, just like to make your story more creative and fun. Like you could take one of those kobolds that you like destroyed all of them and like spare one of them, and he's like, I'll join you, and then like he's the guy, and all of a sudden
that would be for me that'd be Mugmerch the goblin inevitably, like, or for whatever reason someone always wants to keep a goblin when you run the Lost Mines of Phandelver, and it's never the one you're supposed to. It's usually a different one. So I actually had it where Mugmerch, that's what they named him, he was so indebted to the party that when they tried to pick up a second goblin, I had Mugmerch secretly murder that goblin for 2 reasons. 1, story-wise, I think that's super funny. 2, I didn't really want to navigate constantly having 2 goblins in the party.
It's too many goblins, man. 1 goblin is all you need.
Mugmerch and I were on the exact same page in that regard. And Mugmerch murdered the other one and was like, I don't know. He ran away. It was wild. We went to go into the castle and he ran off. What a terrible goblin.
Yeah, that is the downside of the henchman is sometimes your players make it so you have to talk to yourself, and that's the freaking worst.
Yeah, and to have two separate goblin voices that I was gonna, nope, that was not what was about to happen.
Good for you.
But we have number 7, which is a close, very close thing to number 8.
Oh yeah,
because we have pets.
This is inevitable.
Yeah, and this one's real tough though because you have to not kill them.
Yeah,
and that's hard because they don't have very many hit points ever for any reason. So you just kind of have to accept that you don't do it. You don't. You don't hit them with things because they often don't affect other things other than being there and being something that the players have like emotionally attached themselves to.
Yeah.
If it's a summon, if it's a find familiar, if it's all of those things, those have mechanical effects.
Those can be killed easily. You cannot kill a dog.
No, that's exactly what I was going to say. They always want, ducks. But still having a conversation to say like, look, also, if you send quackers in to every fight, something bad is bound to happen. I just really want you to understand that I can only do so much here. Especially if it's trying to like be leveraged as like mechanical reasons of, hey, I send quackers in and I'm going to go ahead and use them for flanking or to give me the help action and I'm like, well, okay. If we're doing that, then like this is going to be a back and forth. The other thing to think is it's still an animal.
Yeah.
Like typically the pet is still a normal animal. Even if you go up and down like the intelligence range, like even if it's a higher intelligence animal, it's still not like magically beholden to you. It will just say, hey, I don't want to die, so I will go away.
Yeah. I don't know. There's some dogs out there who would die for their masters, but don't put them in your game.
Yeah. Don't.
That's so real though. Like in Baldur's Gate, I was like afraid to summon Scratch because like I didn't want him to die.
And what's funny is that's what it mentions is that finding other ways that they are useful that is not directly engaged in in combat. Are they foraging? Are you using them more in the exploration pillar of the game where they are better at tracking and hunting and doing these things that while they're still becoming a valuable member of the party and truly, again, we have to frame this the way it's meant, feel like a reward, it's kind of like a reward. I don't know the way I said it. It sounded like that.
Yeah, it did.
But it has to feel like that because if that's what you're really using it for, if like at the end of the battle, like you've saved some sort of animal that was in captivity, even if it's a larger animal, is it a panther? Is it, something, we're not going very deep into the fantasy realm. Is it a blink dog? That's a good one. Those are more intelligent. Those have things that they can do, but at the same time, it still only has like a handful of hit points that it can deal with, especially once you're at higher levels. So what could that dog do more than others? Like in figuring that out, and I mean, asking, of course, what the players would want, but also having a lot to offer.
Yeah.
And I think that's the important thing with a lot of these rewards is going back and forth with the players to figure out how does this feel like something that makes sense in terms of like, hey, you just completed this big arc. Here are the things that you get from that.
Do you think that it lessens it by having that conversation with your players and be like, hey, like these are limitations. Like when you give them this dog, you like give them the blink dog. This is what it can do. This is what it can't do.
No, I think it's important because one of the things that I've realized over time is it's super easy to not meet unspoken expectations in the sense that like, if I don't set any boundaries and you have ideas and I am wholly and completely unaware of them, there is a huge chance that one or both of us are disappointed by that. Like if I'm not establishing any boundaries on what this, we'll just use the blink dog. Blink Duck and Quackers are both right on par.
What
Both.
about a Blink Duck?
Done. Blink Duck named Quackers.
Yes.
Who, like, if I'm not setting any boundaries at all, there may be like really heavy assumptions about what Quackers can and can't do.
Yeah.
And then I'm potentially gonna have to be a wet blanket mid-session to say no.
Right. That's like when your player's like, oh, I want to send Quackers to blink inside of the BGE's head, and then it will explode
Mm-hmm.
it. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. Plausible. And then it's like, well, that worked. They're both gone.
And you ruined the big bad fight. It only lasted 10 seconds. Hope you had a fun campaign.
Yeah. But I think once you start establishing that, then those boundaries can be pushed. Because the other flip side is if I don't establish anything, then what maybe even like as negative of a potential is nothing.
Right. They don't know what to do. They don't know what not to do or what to do. Yeah. I think adding limitations, and this goes through for all of D&D, right? Like you give them a box that are able to think outside of the box. You have to, you have to set those limitations to help them be creative. So yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with pets. They're going to show up. Everyone's going to want one. I think good DMs are nice to their players, right? And they want the players to have fun. And so they will allow those things. But I think also good DMs have those limitations and set those limitations with their players. So, yeah.
Number 6 is going to be extremely straightforward. What is number 6?
Number 6 is blessings. I actually don't really know how blessings work in D&D because I've never done one.
So the interesting thing with this is that this is one of the few things that is like really, really close to just giving a person a magic item because it is codified. Like it's in the DMG, like these are blessings. These are potential blessings.
Like these are in the manual.
The blessing of health, where you get 2 to your constitution, which would be basically just getting a feat.
Yeah.
Or getting an ability score increase, but you're getting it as part of a reward.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So, oftentimes it's like especially if like a patron, a deity, something along those lines, like you've directly assisted them, then they'll hit you with a blessing.
Oh, okay.
I know another, I don't remember if these are magic items in 5th edition. They were in 2nd, which but basically you just had really, really good books. You would just read the book and it would just increase your stats. Like that was a function like of the magic item of the manual of strength. And like you would just read it and just permanently have a +1 because it told you how to be strong. I don't know.
And now I can bench press 300 pounds because I read this book.
Yeah. I just read techniques on how to bench press and like surprise they worked.
Like, I just need to read a book and then I'll be strong.
I got it. Yeah. Well, I read a book and I'm smarter. I read a book and I'm faster. Yeah. So like it had all of those. It was a really straightforward way to like really specifically help. And one of the things was like, especially back then was meeting, ability score requirements for certain classes, especially if you were trying to multi-class. So like you had very specific reasons why you would want to go from like a 12 to a 13.
Yeah.
Or things like that. So those are there as well. One of the other things that is not on this list at all, but it fits perfectly in here is giving your players feats as rewards.
That's sick. That kind of fits in blessings, I feel like.
Yeah. It's because the blessings, when I tell you they mimic feats, they are feats.
Yeah.
They're just like specific feats. So one of the things I think is if you went through like a certain area and it was like, let's say it was magic was broken or magic was all over the place or magic was wild. What if at the end of that, after correcting it, everyone gets the magic initiate feat? So the whole party now has that and can cast spells. The spellcasters can cast a little more. The fighter can cast 1 because of what they did through that time.
Wow. Yeah.
Or are you being really specific? Like the things they did in a large battle. Do you give the ranger sharpshooter for free because of all the, like, did they Legolas their way through, through the encounters,
Mhm.
and just deciding something that fits the player that they're going to want anyways, because it's a feat, and giving that directly to them as part of the reward rather than just giving, more magic items, because again, they could be, all their attunement slots could be full, justifying why they would get a magic item in the first place. But this is directly speaking to, what did they do? Like, you did these things, so you got better. You read your book. No, but like, you did these things, so you got better. Here's a feat that is a direct mechanical effect for all the things you're already doing.
Mhm. I think that's a great option too. It's all kind of semantics, Same.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and lump 5 and 4 together because
Okay.
I don't like them that much.
Yeah, they're kind of weird.
Yeah, this is tough. This is a tough go. This is going to need to be a very specific party.
Mhm.
Clothing is number 5. Number 4 is fine food and drink. What I think is important is, again, the framing of this article are things that are not magic items.
Uh-huh.
Because my thought is, the only way I could make either of these useful is if I make them magic items. Like,
Well, here's the deal. Here's what I think. I don't understand the fine food and drink. I feel like that's for like people who are like tracking food and like calories while they're playing the game. And that's not the way that I like to play. I'm very much more like narrative focused. And so that's why I do think that the clothing can be a fun option. And it's not necessarily like a reward, but it can just be like a fun narrative element that you like let your players play around with. So something that I like in some of the podcasts that I listen to is they like go to a party or something, like, what are you dressed up like, or whatever. And then they describe like what they're dressed like. And then it gives the players the opportunity to, to personalize their character in that specific moment. And it's like fun storytelling. And I think that's kind of like what a reward would be like as a common like clothing item.
yeah. When it comes to clothing, yes, for specific scenarios, especially, I mean, I would definitely lean heavy into, are we tailoring it? Are we montaging? Are we like, there's a lot of different ways to make it a reward. I mean, keeping it after, would you probably paid for it in the first place? But I think the reward would be, does it land well?
Yeah.
Like, your character has chosen this very specific, let's say a 3-piece suit. Quackers is looking great too.
Roll
Quackers
performance.
with a little bow tie on. But the idea that like making sure that like, especially with the player that feels like they're really invested in that, there's a joke in there where invested suit.
They're in a vest. Yes.
Yeah. But like, the person that feels like they're really like invested in that, but making sure that like there are NPCs talking about it. They're like, something is directly spoken to what they have chosen to wear.
Yeah.
And I feel like, there is a lot of narrative reward. When it comes to fine food and drink, that's more difficult unless you have a player where that's an important piece of their character.
Yeah.
Because I've had that at the table before, where they also had kind of some mechanical elements to it, where they would make meals that would potentially have, with good rolls, mechanical benefits behind it. There was no magic. It was just the idea that like making a really good, being well fed, having delicious food with all the right ingredients sets you, basically prepares you to be better at whatever you're trying to do.
Yeah.
And also poisoning people. But that's that's the other option. Yeah. Is blowfish a fine food? Yes. If done incorrectly, it is could kill you. So
yeah,
those are two options. Can you tell me what number 3 is? And I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because I don't know how I feel.
Yeah, I actually don't know how I feel about this one either. Benefits for a future character. And then I'm going to read about it really quick just so we have the context. This can be an excellent incentive for long-running tables, either ones that use long-running campaign set in the same world, or ones that switch things up and play different games over time. You earn something in the next game by completing tasks in the current one. I think this is really weird, like very niche. I don't know any players or like anybody that does this.
Uh-huh.
This is like I've never heard of this before. It's like, how do you even
Able to
remember the
better
things that you do before your next campaign?
they're able to better help the next generation of heroes, either with bonus feats, stat points, or access to a wider range of spells.
Is it saying like, so your party defeats the bad guy and they like the wizard like starts his own school basically as his like epilogue, and then the reward is that your future player goes to that school and now has access to more spells? Is that like the narrative that we're, I don't know. That's like the first thing that came to my mind.
Yeah. So this, yes, the thing you alluded to is it is very niche. There are, however, two types of games where this works easier, in the sense that you have a West Marches style game where, and for those that don't know, West Marches is basically, let's say there are gotcha. There are 30 to 40 players all involved in this game. And whoever can come to the table that night comes to the table, typically with a quest that they would like to accomplish. It is a very open world.
Oh, okay, yeah. I've heard of this.
Yeah, so everyone shows up and it's like, okay, tonight, Neil, you're the DM. We were really interested in the Caves of Corruption. And so we're going to go deal with that. After completing the Caves of Corruption, do they bring back a spell book? If you bring back that spell book and you put it in the guild hall, every wizard moving forward has direct access to that spell book and can then instantly learn, not instantly, but through the mechanics of the game,
instantly how to bench press 300 pounds.
Yeah, they read the book and they're good to go. But yeah, so they can go back and like those spells become available at all times.
Okay.
The other is more of like going back to that guild hall. Sometimes there'll be, especially at like let's say it's a local game store and they have like a true adventure, like Monster of the Week style game where it's a completely enclosed adventure because anybody can drop in, anybody can drop out. But then because of that, are there house rules that have happened as rewards because of what players have done through time?
Right.
The one that this is basically alluding to that I have never heard of, but now I'm inspired to share the idea and not follow through with it, as is with most ideas on the podcast, because I'm only one man with so much time. But what if you were truly developing a world with your players? What if those spells genuinely were not available until the players figure them out? Those feats were not available until the players figure them out. Stat limits, spell limits, like all of these things are there, and the players are like, what if they're the first truly heroic adventuring party? And so you could approach it from that way. But again, that is a very specific avenue by which to reward them.
That takes a lot of effort, you're going to have to want a lot of commitment in that.
Yeah.
So very niche.
It's interesting because you're going between the two options are either you just have an absolutely rotating cast of characters or you have the most committed players out there, like are kind of the fringes of where this would work.
Yeah.
Number 2, I guess that puts it back on me.
I think so. Yeah.
Common items, stuff. This is just magic items with less
no
magic, just so we're clear. It is though, because Alchemist Fire is like a tiny spell because I just throw it and it blows up and it's fiery.
Right.
Poisons, iron spikes, holy water, healer's kit, caltrops. These are the examples. These are common items and I would say that this is important for newer players at lower levels. This is an absolute must. Totally. Because that's a difficult thing, I think, for early DMs is, well, they did something cool, so I should give them magic. But then you give too much magic too early. But if you're giving them a healer's kit and alchemist fire, that is kind of like a baby magic item. And I think it works really well. It also starts to give the players more ideas about like what they can do in the world of like, wait a minute. So, but if I could throw this, could I throw this thing? And yes, absolutely. Throw it. Let's see what it does. Like the whole town's on fire, but well done. You tested the limits of what can happen. So
yeah, it also adds just like a little bit more believability and like a lived in quality of your world. If they like search somebody's room and like you give them some perfume, and then like that makes it like real to them, I think. And it's just like if you as a DM can think of these items or have them ready to go, it makes looting a little bit more fun for them. But that also gets really annoying when your players are looting every freaking thing. But
Yeah. Okay.
where's the
Yeah.
balance,
Dang it.
Neil?
I like this one more. Yeah. So I like this one more than I thought I did. So one of the other things is that there is a physical limitation on the idea of like how much gold these characters could actually physically manage. So one of the things that you can do as an alternative to gold that is still kind of gold are things like perfume or art or spices and so like I think this is a good place to also like kind of seed the idea of it doesn't have to be
Mm-hmm.
coins. It has to be things of value that could be replaced with coins. Or are you trading perfumes for the magic item that you're looking for because the person really wanted the perfume? And all of these things. So like this is a really good point to say, yeah, art is valuable, like that, like our real world. The banana was duct taped to a wall and they paid lots of money for the duct taped
They really
banana.
did.
So clearly art holds a lot of value. Or the Banksy that shredded
Yeah,
itself after it was sold.
that
That
was
was super
awesome.
cool. But like all of these things can be really valuable and not have to
Yeah.
be magical or just like raw coins.
My buddy, when we ever play Baldur's Gate together, he's always looting like every picture frame, like every. Yeah, he's like, they sell for like 30 gold. And I'm like, okay, whatever.
You're like, and what are we buying with this gold? And nothing, just
Nothing.
hoarding it. So that leads us into number one. What is the number one thing that you should give your players instead of magic items or gold?
The most valuable thing in the world, I would say, Neil, above magic items, above a little duck, avoid duck, is knowledge, of course. Knowledge is the number one answer.
I don't like that. It's not where
I
I
thought
would put
so.
it. So, okay. Yes. And
Yes,
would you
and
not do that intrinsically as part of them doing things?
yeah, is this not just like your notes a part of the game?
Mm-hmm. I would have thought so.
Like these are, yeah. I'm trying to think of like how this is a reward for anything that isn't just like a perception check or like an interrogation check. You know what I mean? Like these are just like narrative aspects of your world.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's like giving away something that you weren't even prepared to give them. Is that what it's trying to say?
That well, I mean, so that's where my head is at, and as always, this is one of the big things about like doing this exercise of going through these articles piece by piece and really thinking about what was the intention of the article, what are ways that we can like pull more out of that. I think knowledge as a reward does have to be knowledge they weren't like super directly seeking.
Mm-hmm.
If the whole quest is find out who's, pulling the strings on the back end of all of this, and you figure out that behind the monarch is a mind flayer, well, sure, but that's also exactly what they were going for.
Mm-hmm.
When you find out that Quackers is also a celestial being that
I knew it. Oh my gosh, I knew it the whole time.
yeah. See, that feels fun because that's not what they were going for. So like as part of the reward, or is it a piece of their backstory that they weren't expecting to find out? There's something to be said about giving knowledge they weren't directly seeking that can feel definitely like a reward, but knowledge at its core is just what's going to happen every session. I would hope is that they're going to learn more and more as they go along.
Yeah, I think that's also as a DM, you're supposed to touch like every aspect of things and make sure your players are having a good time and that they feel like cared about in a weird way, like that you care about their characters. And I think part of that is incorporating, knowledge about their characters into the story. So maybe it's like you said, like a backstory element that they weren't expecting, or one example from our campaign, Cade and Derek, your co-host on Dungeon Masters Block, he was guesting on our pod, and they met together to like come up with some ideas on like what they could do for our episode. And they put in this NPC who directly was they were trying to trick me basically and like pull a prank on me. And I don't know if this falls into
Oh,
it.
okay.
Do you know what I'm
Yeah,
talking
yeah.
about with
Yeah,
the
no,
Bulk
yeah, I
Hogan
didn't.
character?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, it was so funny, and it was honestly a gift to me. It was a reward. I didn't earn it in any way because it was just like a joke, but they knew my character well enough to know like he's going to fall for this hook, line, and sinker, and it's just going to be so funny. And I feel like it's not really knowledge based. It's like a backstory of another character and my character and like how they came together. But I thought that was great, you know? And so maybe that's another aspect of this one. I don't know. This one's kind of tough.
Yeah, like I said, I don't know that the person that writes this is really truly looking at it from a 10-to-1 perspective, because they're going to try and write this article in the sense that like typically you're going to try and hit as hard as you can, as fast as you can when it comes to an article to keep the person reading.
Yeah.
So it may be that number 10 is the strongest one that they felt they had, because knowledge is, again, it's going to happen because you have to keep giving them more knowledge about what's going on, or else they're just kind of flopping around trying to figure things out. So I do think from a narrative perspective, especially like working on people's backstories and giving them pieces that they otherwise didn't know, because like one of the last arcs that I had for a player was they basically had to go back to where they came, where they had come from, and basically figure out, oh, things are in a bad way, we're going to solve them. And also, fun fact, I was basically kicked out of this whole place because of things that I did. And through this process, we'll basically be allowed to go back. So much so, and it's awesome that the player decided to do this, so much so that they're like, I have to stay. Like, I don't think my character would continue to adventure with the party anymore. Like,
Whoa.
things are in a really, like, the sense that like there was a large conflict. So, when you think about, when they're like, oh, the men that are here have either seen too few winters or too many, like that kind of thing. And so the player recognized like, yeah, my character would stay. Like, they know they need to be here and help fix things even further. And that was it. Their character stayed.
Wow.
And they rolled up a new one and joined the party, and off we went. So like, knowledge from that perspective landed really well. Felt like a huge reward. So again, so much so that the player basically retired their character.
It was so good the player allegedly like kind of just died.
Yeah, they're like, we're done. I can't do it.
I can't do any better than that,
Yep. So that could be one right there. But sir, we have done it, which means
we have. This is a long app.
Of course, if you wanted to tell us how other ways that you have been adding rewards that are not magic items or gold, you can always email us at dungeonmastersblock@gmail.com. And of course, if you want to leave us a rating or review, feel free to do that on whatever super random podcatcher that you have. Also, again, I always think that it's a person, that they are a pod catcher. They go out and they catch pods for me and they come back. It makes it feel more fun when I listen.
They have a big net.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Just run through with overalls on and like a floppy hat and a big net. Yes, absolutely. But if you want to follow us on social media, we are at DMS_block. I am at Jote Maniac. And
yeah, so you can follow me. I have my socials are at jstewart0192 on Instagram, or if you want to follow my art Instagram, it's at jstewillustration. I do all the art for our podcasting network, and I do other stuff as well. But also, please follow the Bad Venture Club on all of our socials and give us a listen on all your podcasting listening places, Apple, Spotify, whatever. We're just finishing up our season 1 arc, and season 2 is in the works right now. So
As always, there are links to the Bad Venture Club in the show notes. As always, a huge thank you to the bards over at Bombarded for our intro and outro music, and you can find more about them at bombardedcast.com. But no need to work out alone, because you can check out this amazing lifting partner right now.
Lifting weights is what I do. Look at me. Lift these weights.
So we haven't done a lifting partner in a while. It's literally just like showcasing someone in the TTRPG community, but I was just going to have you talk about the Bad Venture Club because you're here, you have joined the network, and we wanted to add some APs over time, and it never quite worked out. And then the Bad Venture Club came up, and you have joined the Block Party Podcast Network. So can you tell me and the listeners about the Bad Venture Club? You can tell me, I've listened to everything, but I mean, maybe there's stuff I don't know.
Shoot, I wasn't ready to give an elevator pitch on our podcast. The Bad Venture Club is a tabletop role-playing podcast, actual play podcast. I don't know what to say. Like we're a bunch of nerds that play D&D together. I play Chris, the halfling rogue.
One of the things that I find great about the Bad Venture Club is that there's a way that you guys have fun that isn't always out there. Either it's super serious or it's like, this isn't to the point where like, and I'm not knocking it because they're all different, but like the latest thing from Three Black Halflings is like, this isn't really a game anymore. It is, but it's more an audio drama than it is that happens to have people rolling dice on occasion. To the point where it's like, this doesn't feel attainable by me. I love listening to it, but it's not something that I could be necessarily a part of unless I magically got invited to something like that. I don't think it's the kind of like audio production lifting that I would ever do for myself. The Bad Venture Club is like, it has really good audio and some of that, but also it's actually just friends sitting around a table, which I also think is interesting. I wonder what the percentage is of APs where like people are all actually physically sitting around the same table like you are.
Yeah, I love that aspect of it, honestly. And we really just try to have a fun time. And we do have a fun time. We're just goofing around, and hopefully people that listen to it can sense that and get that, because like that's our goal at the end of the day, is just that people will laugh at our stupid jokes and connect with our stupid characters. You know, we try to tell a fun story in a fun way. That's it.
I mean, you got a hat that summons pigeons. So
I do, and I use it frequently.
Yes, as anyone should.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. So so you said season 1 is about to wrap up and season 2 is about to start.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you could easily get through season 1 and be prepared for season 2 to come out as well.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
I've done it. You could do it too.
It's totally worth it. Our first audio is really bad, guys, but it gets better, I promise. By like episode 10, it will be a little bit better. But then like by episode 15, it's way better. So like that's huge, exponential growth.
So today's lifting partner is none other than the Bad Venture Club. So if you haven't, again, link in the show note, go check them out. Yeah. And tell them we sent you. I don't know. That's the thing that people used to say.
Yeah. Call me and tell me that Neil told you to come to our podcast.
Cool. So Jordan's number is
just beep it out.
Yeah. 555-55-555. That wasn't 5. There. Now we have enough. But with that, we'll turn out the lights and head out of the gym. But before we go, as always, I want to implore you, the listener, to join the forums, the Discord, Twitter, anywhere else you can find us, and be part of these challenges, exercises, and other amazing conversations being had.
To do that, head over to bit.ly/DM-Banter and try some DM-Nastics so your players don't ask, do you even lift, bro? Do you even lift, bro?
Get a pump.
That's it. It's good. It hurts. I know it does. That's it. Get it.